You're listening to Berserker Boys 2. Wolf. Written by Lulu M. Sylvian. Chapter 1. What are you wearing? Aaliyah's voice sounded scratchy through the speakerphone. Clothes, why? Yeardley asked. Aren't you and Maisie doing cosplay? I am, Yeardley chuckled. Maisie said she was, but she hadn't decided what yet. Why aren't you dressing up? Yeardley leaned in closer to the mirror and swiped the mascara wand through her lashes, blending them into the false lashes. I modified my Halloween costume from last year. Red and black Harley Quinn with long pants, no booty shorts. Arg. I don't know what to wear, Aaliyah confessed. What, Vic's not helping you? Vic said I don't need to. He's not dressing up. He said his geek cred is secure, and that I should be fine since I will be with him. You don't need to dress up if you don't want to. She pulled back and checked out her reflection. She tugged on her hair, adjusting the high ponytails. Her pale blonde hair fell to just below her chin level. Won't I stick out? Not at all, there are going to be plenty of people in just t-shirts and jeans. You'll be fine. Yeardley's phone started clicking. Hey, Aaliyah, I'm getting another call. I'll see you there. And if you're worried about it, just put on a superhero t-shirt and you'll be fine. Bye, I'll see you later. Yeardley hit the buttons on her phone, switching calls. Maisie's face appeared on the screen. Yeardley, what are you wearing? She sounded panicked. Why is everyone asking me this? What are you wearing? I found an old Wonder Woman costume in the back of my closet, and it still fits, Maisie said. That sounds fun. Are you sure? Maisie asked. Maisie, have you put it on? Yeah. Send me a pic. Okay, you'll be honest with me. You'll tell me if I look too fat? Yeardley sighed. Maisie, I will tell you if you look stupid. Yeardley picked up her phone and leaned back against the bathroom counter. She didn't have to wait long before Maisie's picture flashed on her notifications. She swiped the screen so that she could see the whole picture. Maisie looked adorable. Her costume was a more historical twist of the comic book heroine's outfit. Instead of a bodysuit, she had a short pleated skirt and a chiton-style neckline. But all the colors and all the stars and the large gold bracers were there. You look adorable. But am I too fat for this? Maisie, I love you. But you are going to tell me that I am fat, but that doesn't mean I'm not also cute. Then why are you asking me, if you know that's what I'm gonna say? Yeardley asked. But am I cute enough? Cute enough for what? Yeardley asked. She knew exactly what Maisie was asking. Was Maisie cute enough for Scottie? She didn't have that answer. Scottie didn't seem interested in Maisie. But Yeardley had no idea what Scottie was looking for in a woman. Scottie was Maisie's big crush. He had been her minvid crush until she met him in real life, and ever since she had been obsessed with whether he would like everything she did or wore, or. It didn't help that he was a flirt. Yeardley was busy dealing with her own crush. She didn't have time to also manage Maisie's. Can I send you what I'm wearing? Yeardley asked. Oh yeah, send me pictures, Maisie squealed. Yeardley posed in the mirror and took a few pictures. Oh, Harley Quinn. It's perfect. Are you sure I look okay? Maisie asked again. Maisie, you look adorbs, you really do. Look, I need to finish getting ready so I can be there in time. You look great, I'll see you there. Yeardley ended the call and tossed the phone back on the counter. Lipstick and jewelry were the finishing touches, and she would be ready. Maisie's anxiety over if Scottie would think she was cute, Yeardley keenly felt, but in regards to Wolf. Wolf was Scottie's roommate. He was also a super gamer, so much so he was a game programmer for the wildly popular Edgeland. Maisie, Aaliyah, and Yeardley had met the three men by chance a few weeks ago. The guys, Wolf, Vic, and Scottie, were all dressed as Vikings for a live-action roleplay event. Even though they had a misunderstanding over Norse heathen symbols, Aaliyah and Vic hit it off immediately. After Aaliyah and Vic went from nothing to being a couple in the blink of an eye, she had met the other guys a few more times. It made Yeardley nuts because she couldn't get any more information about Wolf out of her friend. It was almost as if Aaliyah wasn't paying any attention to any man other than Vic. At least Yeardley wasn't as obviously obsessive as Maisie was over Scottie. Well, she hoped she wasn't being as obvious. She and Maisie had gotten to see their crushes again a few days earlier, when Scottie had arranged a group outing to the movies. The next installment in everyone's favorite superhero saga was being released. It had sounded like a great idea, and Yeardley had really hoped she would get a chance to do a bit more than awkwardly talk with Wolf. When she and Maisie arrived at the theater, Aaliyah having gone with Vic, Yeardley was disappointed to find it was a large group event that Scottie hadn't organized so much as announced he was going and invited everyone who followed him on Minvid and GameWatch. Yeardley wasn't nearly as crushed as Maisie had been. She spent most of the movie silently crying into her popcorn. Yeardley had only gotten to say a few words to Wolf and cast her gaze at him throughout the evening. She caught him looking at her, so she had hope. An hour in real time and an eternity in traffic later, Yeardley stood in the concourse of the hotel in front of the ticketing room. She was under the mid-century mobile-style chandelier where she, Maisie, and Aaliyah had agreed to meet. Yeardley. Maisie's exuberant voice cut through the general noise of hundreds of bodies milling about, having conversations of their own. It didn't take her long to find her friend. A curvy, short Princess Diana aka Wonder Woman, not British royalty, hurried toward her. Her costume was a perfect blend of comic book and historical accuracy. "You look fabulous," Yeardley said. Maisie put her hands out and danced in a little spin, showing off her outfit. When she finished, she kicked back her foot for effect. "As do you, Miss Quinn," she offered. Yeardley struck a dramatic pose with the back of her hand against her forehead. "This old thing, I found it in the back of my closet." She shifted and began brushing down the sides of her vest. "No, really, I had to dig this out of the back of my closet. I can't believe these jeans still fit." The jeans in question had one leg in white and black vertical stripes, with the other leg solid black. And they were insanely tight. The red diamonds on the black leg were newly added decorations, but the holes in the knees were original. The black vest was from her current wardrobe rotation, so the decorations were all safety pinned on, including the drawing of a certain green-haired clown with a giant red X over his face pinned to her back. A red push-up bra and a fishnet top finished the look. "Is Aaliyah here yet?" Yeardley asked. She waved a program around that she had already rolled in her nervous state. Aaliyah meant Vic, and hopefully Vic meant Wolf would be nearby. "They're here. Scottie got a new car, so they are out in the parking lot somewhere oohing and aahing over it." She sounded a little annoyed. Maisie sighed. With her chest and her cosplay, that was a potentially dangerous combination. "If you want Scottie's attention, make sure you do that around him," Yeardley said as she made a wiggly gesture with her finger. "Do what?" Yeardley did an exaggerated lift and drop of her own chest. "Look who's talking. You'll put an eye out with those." "That, my friend, is the plan." Speaking of, Yeardley unrolled her program and opened it. "I can't find Wolf in here anywhere. I thought he was supposed to be doing some of the gamer panels." "What do you mean?" Maisie leaned over and looked at the program, and Yeardley flipped through the pages. "Maybe Wolf isn't his real name. I always assumed it was his last name or something." "There you are," Aaliyah said, walking up to them. "Ladies." Scottie announced his presence. "You didn't come and check out my sweet new ride." He already had two scantily clad women clinging to him, one under each arm. "I just got here," Yeardley said. Next to her, Maisie began vibrating. "I saw your Minvid when you bought it. That is not the same. You need to come sit in it. Tell you what, after lunch, I'll take you for a ride." "I want to go for a ride," one of the women clinging to him said. Her innuendo was as clear as glass. "Of course you do, babe, it's an awesome vehicle." Either Scottie was dense and missing the woman's hint, or he was ignoring her. Yeardley had yet to decide if he was wily smart or a lucky thick-skulled himbo. "What did you get?" Yeardley asked. She had been thinking about upgrading. Maybe he would recommend his dealer. "Taycan Turbo," he said. Yeardley gulped. Porsche. Scottie's car capabilities and hers were not on the same playing field. "Yeah, it is sweet." "Damn," she let out a resolved breath. "I need to make min vids." Scottie gave her a raking glance up and down. "You do better with Friends Exclusive." Yeardley started to growl. Vic slapped Scottie upside the back of his head. "Don't be a pig." "Dude." Scottie rubbed the back of his head and glared at the other man. Scottie's hand shifted from rubbing his head to rubbing his jaw. "When did you decide to grow your beard out?" Maisie asked, clearly suckered in by his prompting. Maisie's hand clamped down on Yeardley's arm. Her friend didn't care if he was a sexist pig or a dolt. Maisie's crush for Scottie continued to burn bright. Yeardley expected Maisie was holding on to her so that she didn't accidentally reach out and touch the man's face. "It's about time you noticed. No one has said a damn thing about it." "Maybe we are hoping if we ignore it, it will go away," Vic grumbled. Aaliyah pushed on his chest a little. "Play nice." Neither of them had dressed up. They looked like Aaliyah and Vic always did. Except for the first time they met, Yeardley had no indication that Vic did cosplay, or participated in any of the geekery that Scottie made his living at. Scottie, on the other hand, was never without some form of cosplay, be it a random helmet on his head or the shield he actually carried to the movie night he organized. Today, of course, he had gone all out, complete with green body paint. He was tall, and with flaming red hair that contrasted intensely with his makeup, he made an impressive orc. "Can we go already?" "I don't want to miss the photo ops," one of Scottie's adoring companions whined. "Duty calls," Scottie said as he let the women by his side steer him away. "See you later," Maisie said rather mournfully. "Is Wolf not presenting?" Yeardley turned and asked Vic. "As far as I know, he still is." "Why?" She didn't want to admit that she had gone over the program with a fine-toothed comb, looking for his name. "I'd thought he would be with you guys this morning." She tried to hide her disappointment. Vic shook his head. "Haven't seen him. He's here somewhere. Shall we?" "We're going to go check out the artist alley. See you later?" Aaliyah asked. "Costume contest," Maisie called out after them. It was important to her that all her friends got together for that. "Costume contest," she said again, a little deflated. "They'll be there," Yeardley said, bumping her shoulder. "What do you want to do first?" "The panel I think Wolf is supposed to be on starts soon. Can we go and at least see if he's there?" "Of course." Maisie gasped and turned, her gaze following an exceptional costume. Yeardley saw the side of an elaborate blue Elizabethan-style dress. It would have been more fitting for a Ren fair. But a good costume was a good costume, and she understood showing off one's work. "Hayden?" Maisie asked as she approached the Elizabethan woman. Yeardley followed, and as they got closer, she realized that the only things the costuming really had in common with a Ren fair Elizabethan garb was the big skirt and the corseted top. When Hayden turned, Yeardley gasped. "Not Elizabethan, dwarf. High fantasy dwarf." Hayden's dress was embroidered with patterns that looked like magic symbols. The fabric up close shimmered with different colors, blues, greens, and pinks in the crossweave. She practically dripped with velvet and furs, and obnoxiously large gems. But the crowning glory was Hayden's hair. Piles of curls and braids in a rich dark brown adorned her. Braids traveled across her cheeks, and integrated the dwarf's beard with the elaborate coiffure on her head. Her diminutive, yet sturdy stature only added to the overall perfection of the costuming. "Maisie? I haven't seen you in forever," the regal dwarf woman said. The friends hugged and Maisie introduced Yeardley. "May I?" Yeardley asked, reaching for the long draping sleeve of the other woman's dress. "Of course." Hayden held out her arm. The fabric was silk, no denying the way it felt to her fingers. This is simply stunning. Maisie waved her phone in Yeardley's face. Take a picture of us. I haven't seen Hayden since, oh crap, the last time I came to a con. Was I seeing things, or were you just talking to Scottie, man, like it was no big deal? Hayden asked. You follow him on minvids too? Maisie practically squeaked. Oh, it's a big deal every freaking time, Yeardley chuckled. Shut up, Maisie said as she made a face. Our friend Aaliyah is kind of dating one of his friends. So by extension, you've gotten to talk to him? Hayden asked. Yeah, Maisie said with a sigh. Is he as nice as he seems? Yeardley laughed. What's so funny? Wolf's deep voice caught her off guard. It was her turn to eep and get flustered. Every time she met Wolf again, she was shocked at his height. She was tall, he was taller. And today his boots gave him extra height, as did the way he had a section of his long locks pulled up and away from his face. She was about to pick on Scottie, Maisie said, crossing her arms. Well, how can I help? He asked. Yeardley swallowed a giggle. This is Hayden, one of Maisie's old con friends. Yeardley made a quick introduction. Lady Hayden. Wolf took Hayden's hand and bowed low over it. If Hayden wasn't swooning, Yeardley certainly was. Wolf happens to be Scottie's roommate. I thought I recognized you, Hayden said with a bit too much awe in her voice. I had asked if Scottie was as sweet in real life as he seems on minvid. I wouldn't know, I haven't licked him. Somehow Wolf kept a perfect straight disdained expression, as the three women around him dissolved into giggles. If you were asking if he's a good man, I'd have to say yes. And that's not because he would charge me more rent if I bad-mouthed him. I have a panel in 15 minutes. I thought I would see if you wanted to accompany me. Yeardley's heart bounced around her chest with nerves when he held his elbow out to her. Yes, of course. It was lovely to meet you, Lady Hayden. Maisie, you coming? Yeardley asked as she looped her hand over Wolf's arm. She had to fight to focus and not turn into a complete basket case. She was touching Wolf at his invitation. I'm gonna catch up with Hayden. If that's okay with you? Maisie turned to her old con-friend for confirmation. Lovely, of course. I'm headed to a wing-making demonstration and workshop, Hayden said. I'd love to catch up. Oh, that sounds like fun, Maisie said. Yeardley was not fully certain this was her life as she strode arm in arm with Wolf down the concourse toward the ballroom where the panel on programming video games would be held. They looked more like a couple headed out for the club than a couple at a con for all things sci-fi fantasy. But they looked like a couple, both in black and red. His boots were covered in silver spikes, his knees peeked out from beneath the black kilt he wore. His red shirt had several buttons opened, and he was all wrapped in several straps of a belted harness. I know my cosplay is feeble at best, but it's recognizable, Yeardley started. You look rather stunning, his voice was low and grovelly. It was doing something to Yeardley. Thanks. She blushed. You look rather stunning yourself. But I don't know the reference, she confessed. I'm cosplaying a badass games developer. Sometimes it's hard to be taken seriously in too much costuming. I'll dress up tomorrow when I'm not on a panel and can play more. They entered the long hall and walked toward the front. I have to go up and check in, Wolf said. I'll grab a seat. Have fun. Yeardley walked down the empty row and found a seat close to the middle. Wolf took his place on the stage, greeting the other panelists, and sitting behind a placard that identified him as Simon, programmer Edgeland. Well, that explained why she couldn't find him in the program. Simon, though, Wolf suited him so much better. Chapter 2. Yeardley wasn't exactly sure what she was expecting. But the discussion went off the rails quickly, and the moderator had difficulty keeping it on track. One of the programmers, and total tech bro named Colin, spent the majority of his time whining about sexist ideals in games, specifically having to remove certain misogynistic elements from game design. He wanted them in there. He acted like games were for his doughy white butt alone. Wolf and the other non-white and only non-male programmer were not letting Colin or his antiquated ideas slide. So you're saying this panel represents gaming segments? The Asian woman, Amelia, leaned into her mic and spoke. There are 6 of us, 2 persons of color and 1 woman. We do not represent an accurate spread of the industry. That's because more men game, Colin blustered. That's bull, Wolf started. Language, please, the moderator interjected. Wolf didn't even look at the moderator and continued. 45% of online gamers are women, while roughly 30% of gamers are non-white. Where are you getting your numbers? I think you're just making stuff up. Oh, like you are with most gamers are men? Amelia interjected. A simple internet search will get you this data. She turned back to Wolf. He continued, of programmers, 25% are women and 25% are non-white. This panel isn't balanced. With Amelia and I, we represent the non-white programmers, but you need another woman on the panel to better represent female programmers. That's because game spaces are predominantly made for men, a small guy who seemed to be Team Colin commented. Amelia looked at the moderator and closed her mouth. She clearly wanted to say something not allowed. Instead she said, game spaces need to be inclusive. Men, women are non-binary friends. Everyone is welcome, should be welcome. Oh, so you're saying we should provide safe game space for kids in something like Mountains Deep? Mountains Deep had been a violent game that included very adult situations, but because it was pretty and had cute fuzzy animals, parents had purchased it without paying attention. It came under a lot of scrutiny when some parents finally paid attention to what they had purchased for their kid, and were mortified that they weren't cute fuzzy animals, but horny furries. Games come with a rating for a reason, another panelist said. So, are you saying games should come with a designation if they are for men or for women? That sounds useful. I don't want female players in my band of brothers rating party, Colin said. That's some incel crap right there, Amelia scoffed. Games need to better represent the population of players. And maybe if they were designed with more inclusivity, they would attract more diverse players. I don't want kids in my type of game, Colin said. No one is saying let kids into the more adult-oriented games, Wolf responded. That's exactly what she's saying. Amelia mumbled something away from the mic. Wolf leaned into his mic. Throwing kids into the mix right now is a red herring. Games do need designations based on age appropriateness, level of violence, and so on. Gendering gameplay is not on that list. No one is saying be age inclusive, stop bringing it up. This isn't what I signed on for. We're supposed to be talking about programming and game design, not gatekeeping who can and can't play, who can and cannot program. I'm out. The guy who had been seated next to Amelia stood and walked off the platform. Colin sat back, crossed his arms with a smug look on his face. He would win because he would bully everyone until they were sick of him. He would be the last man standing on his hill of garbage, never realizing it was garbage, and thinking he had won. Guys like him annoyed Yeardley to the point of sputtering incoherent oaths. She cast her gaze side to side and then tightened her gut and stood up. Excuse me, she said as she stepped over a few other spectators seated in her row and into the aisle. She shook herself and strode onto the platform and sat in the empty chair next to Amelia. Who the heck are you? The little guy next to Colin asked. Language, the moderator yelled. I'm Yeardley, I'm a woman and a programmer. I'm here to represent. Amelia reached up with a fist. Yeardley bumped it. I'm sorry, what are you doing here? The moderator asked. Well, if 25% of programmers and almost half of players are actually women, I am here to represent. And how does that add to the conversation? Colin asked. I'm pretty sure I just told you, Yeardley said. The audience gasped and a few clapped. Amelia rummaged for something behind her, and then reached in front of Yeardley, grabbing the name card that had the name of the guy who left. She bit off the cap of a Sharpie and wrote, Yardley, representing. I hope I spelled that right, Amelia whispered. It was close enough for today's purposes. You can tell when a game company has brought in too many women, Colin stated. How's that? The quality of the game drops. I've had that happen at a few places, and I've had to move on. I can't work in a subpar programming environment, Colin stated. I can't say I've ever noticed anything like that, one of the other panelists said. I have to agree with Colin. Of course his minion did. Yeardley wondered if Colin's proctologist didn't see that guy's photo during rectal exams. Females in the workplace really change the dynamic and the work suffers. Wolf barked out a laugh. You mean you have to behave like a human, and you can't go around making sexist jokes. You just don't like getting called out on your inappropriate behaviors at work. And you work for who? The minion man asked. I work for Sunrise Enterprises, the makers of Edgeland. We have a diverse programmer pool. Yeah, I used to work on that one. When it was good, Colin sneered. Bringing up that you used to work on Edgeland isn't the flex you think it is, Wolf scoffed. Why? Because I was smart enough to leave? Colin asked. This was no longer a conversation to inform people interested in becoming programmers, but was some kind of contest for Colin. And he was cranky that no one wanted to cheer for him. Gentlemen, please. We have already gotten off topic. Let's not air our dirty laundry as well, the moderator cut in. Yeardley leaned forward. Righteous indignation overrode any nerves she may have had. I think the conversation has touched on an important aspect of programming that those who are interested in it need to be aware of. There are a lot of old-school ideals that simply do not have a place in the industry anymore. In any industry, women and people of color are underrepresented in these conversations. I had a manager who was told on his first day that his job was to let go of all the women in the department. Needless to say, not only did he quit, he took all of us with him. What company was that? I think I'll apply for a job there. Colin's comment was met with jeers. I said I'm here to represent, and that is an important aspect of the conversation that is so often swept under the rug. Oh wow, typically we would open the panel up to questions from the floor, but we are out of time, the moderator cut in. I want to thank our panel for a discussion that I am sure will go down in con history. And probably the last one they will let me moderate. Okay folks, next up in this room is sci-fi writers and world building, and be sure to go into the main hall with the vendor room and the main stage for the costume contest starting at 12:45. Yeardley pushed her chair back. Her nerves were jangled, that was intense, and more than a little unexpected. That went off the rails, Amelia said. Wolf loomed behind Yeardley. I need to see you for a minute. Yeardley gulped, fully distracted. She didn't get a chance to properly introduce herself to the other woman. Wolf's voice was deep and menacing. Yeardley inwardly winced as he wrapped his long nails around her arm and led her from the dais. She didn't say anything, waiting for him to berate her for having embarrassed him and for having done something so completely rude. They turned left instead of right, and he directed her into an empty hallway. Before she could explain, he had her pressed against the wall. He crushed against her. His hair fell around their heads, blocking out the rest of the world. That was so hot, he growled. He didn't give her a chance to answer. She wanted to say. She couldn't remember what she was going to say. He erased her memory with his closeness. Oh, oops, Amelia's voice cut through the haze in Yeardley's mind. Wolf eased back. He kept his grip on Yeardley and didn't really move. Hey, you need something? He asked. Amelia shook her head, a smirk on her face. I was basically coming to do the same thing, but you beat me to it. Yeardley, that was a badass power move. And if you decide you're done playing with him, give me a call. She shook her head and turned. She lifted her hand and twirled it in the air. Carry on, my man, carry on. Wolf dropped his head forward with a heavy sigh. Yeardley started laughing. She covered her mouth and kept giggling. That was intense. She's right, you know. That move was badass. You just walked onto the stage and sat down like you owned that room. It seemed like the right thing to do. That Colin is such a bully. I bet he doxes people who make him mad in games. Wolf started to say something and then shook his head. Can I kiss you? I feel like I've been waiting for you to clue in for the longest time. Yeardley lifted her face to his. That's where you're hiding. Vic's voice killed the mood. When Yeardley opened her eyes, Vic was right there, almost as close as Wolf. He had one hand on the wall and the other on Wolf's back, locking them in. News of your little adventure is spreading like wildfire. You can't hide back here forever. Besides, someone else is bound to find you, and then instead of being the ball-buster on the programming panel, they'll be talking about Harley being inappropriate in public. Yeardley groaned. Wolf's hand crossed between them and he shoved Vic back. No one is being inappropriate in public. Nothing was happening, Yeardley complained. We're kind of in public, Wolf countered. Observation, not complaint. Well, it looked like he was trying to push you into that wall, Vic said. Oh my God, Vic, leave them alone. We're going to go find a snack, you want something? Wolf adjusted his various straps, mentally settling back into his clothes. As if the thought of taking everything off and spending the rest of the day up in his room hadn't been very close to the forefront of his mind. Yeardley shook her head. I'm not hungry. I want to hit the vendor floor, if that's okay? Go get something if you're hungry. Wolf shook his head. Meeting up at the costume competition? You got it. Vic slung an arm possessively over Aaliyah's shoulders, and they left. Wolf held out a hand. Shall we? Yeardley slipped her hand into his, and felt a heightened tingle of nerves as their skin glided together. Chapter 3. Butterflies danced in Yeardley's stomach as she held on to Wolf. The adrenaline rush from his kisses, and the way people were coming up to her to tell her how much they appreciated her standing up and taking to that stage like she owned it, had her buzzing. I'm so tired of cis white guys thinking that everything is for them, one new fan complained. The industry is such a breeding ground for incels. I bet you work with a bunch of nice guys. She did air quotes, indicating she didn't believe any of them were actually nice. It's like that in a lot of tech industries. But I can't speak to gaming, Yeardley said. Wolf squeezed her hand and she turned to him. I can, he said. And yes, there is still too much of that in the industry. My advice is to keep at it. There are decent people in the industry. But the jerks are so loud, the fan whined before thanking Yeardley one more time and running off to join her friends. Wow, is it always like that after being on a panel? Yeardley asked. Wolf chuckled. Heck no. What you did was pretty spectacular. She groaned and put her face against his shoulder. Me and my big mouth. But that Colin guy ticked me off so much. That's what Colin does, he ticks people off. I think he thinks it's being clever. Distract me, she said. You already turned down running off to my room. He smoldered at her. Yeah, okay, not my brightest move. But seriously, pretend I'm a total noob to cons. What do we do now? Wolf scanned his gaze down her front. Okay, let's go find as many Harley Quinns as possible and take a picture with them. Yeardley laughed, like a scavenger hunt. Another Harley walked past, several yards up the concourse. Yeardley grabbed Wolf and hurried after the woman. Harley! Yeardley called out. The other Harley Quinn stopped and looked around. She smiled when she saw Yeardley waving at her. Can I get a picture? Yeardley asked. I'm going to see how many different Harleys I can get pictures with. They posed and Wolf took pictures with both of the Harleys' phones. That sounds like fun, can I tag along? By the time the alarm on Wolf's phone alerted them to the start of the costume contest, Yeardley had collected 3 Harleys, and they were scouring the convention together taking pictures. One poor joker, thinking he was getting a fun picture surrounded by women, ended up being threatened by various costume weapons. He was a good sport and played along. The costume contest starts in 10, Wolf announced. Yeardley's shoulders slumped. This is fun, but I did promise Maisie I would be there. We can always pick this back up. I think we inadvertently started a small horde. Finding them again shouldn't be a problem. Yeardley waved at her compatriots in cosplay and let Wolf lead her to the ballroom. The door they entered through was right between the split between the show stage, where the costume contest would be, and the vendor floor. The contest stage was set up like a T, with a runway cutting into the rows of seats. Oh, we could have gone shopping, Yeardley said. When Wolf looked at her, she smiled. But the Harley hunt was way more fun. Thank you for suggesting it. Come on, let's find Maisie. The seats were filling up fast with con-goers. Yeardley spotted Maisie surrounded with empty chairs. She had bags spread around her saving seats. Let me guess, you're the tall, ballsy woman who barged up onto the stage during the panel and began yelling? Maisie said as soon as she saw Yeardley. She wasn't yelling. And there was a vacancy, Wolf defended her. Let me guess, Yeardley sat next to her friend. Some guy told you about what happened. How did you guess it was a guy? Simple, because if one of the programming women had told you, they would have said. The words epic, badass, and awesome display of woman power would have been used, Wolf cut her off. Only the gamer dude bros are upset by what happened. Aren't you a gamer dude? Maisie asked. I am, but more importantly, I am a gamer of color, and that changes things dramatically. Just as being a female gamer does. I value a diverse playing field, and having diverse avatars available. Cis-het white guys for the most part think the world needs to be cis-het and white. But don't you dare say not all men, Yeardley glared at Maisie. I was going to say, but what about Scottie and Vic? And before you scold me again, I realize how stupid that is. They wouldn't be your friends if they were like that. Your own brother is like that, Yeardley pointed out. Maisie sighed. Yep, and he's nothing like you guys. Nothing. Sorry, I have a lot of family-based internalized misogyny to unlearn. It's right up there with my value, has jack all to do with the number on the scale. Yeardley leaned over and hugged Maisie. That's my girl. Wolf reached around her and patted Maisie's shoulder. Okay, stop. Change of subject, Maisie wiped her face as if there might have been tears. I can't decide if I want to do an orc or a lady dwarf for my next cosplay. Yeardley gasped. You're going to make a new costume? That's fantastic. Lady Hayden's garb was quite impressive, Wolf said. I know, right? And the wig work, amazing. But I don't know if my skin can take all that spirit glue. I get contact dermatitis so easily. So latex is out for you then? How do you think you would do with all the makeup? I wear makeup almost every day, so I'm thinking that makeup might be better. I need to get some glue and do a test run. She turned to look at the vendor booths behind the rows of chairs where they sat. Do you think there might be a vendor selling cosplay stuff? Oh, look, there they are. Maisie raised her arm and began waving. Yeardley turned to see Aaliyah and Vic walking toward them. We brought snacks, Aaliyah announced as they took the seats in front of Maisie and Yeardley. Vic tossed Wolf a crinkly bag of chips, as Aaliyah handed Yeardley and Maisie bags of M&Ms. Have we missed anything yet? Vic asked. He sat and then spun around so that he was facing them instead of the stage. It hasn't started yet, Yeardley said. What are we looking for? Do we know anyone participating? My friend Hayden is part of a group of lady dwarves. Her costume was gorgeous, Yeardley said. If the rest of her group looks half as good as she did. Welcome to FanFunCon, sponsored by World Art Games and Fascination Comics. After the cosplay contest, go visit their displays in Hall H. I'm Draco, and I'm your MC this afternoon. The announcer cut her off. Aaliyah and Vic turned around and began sharing snacks like they were in a movie theater. At least he didn't tell us his house affiliation, Maisie giggled. Yeardley missed the announcement for what category they were looking at, but then a line of paladins and knights awkwardly shuffled down the runway and back to the main stage. She guessed it had to have been an armor category. The armor class competition was good, not that he paid much attention. Wolf didn't really care about the costumes or the cosplay. Not today. Not after that spectacular display of intelligence, followed by the hottest kiss of his adult life. His attention was all for Yeardley. He didn't want to mess this up. She was perfection from that smart mouth to those beautiful eyes. Maybe a kilt today wasn't the best idea. But he wanted to look good, for her and in general, but mostly for her. Her eyes sparkled as she watched the costumes and laughed and giggled with her friend. And every so often, she would turn that dazzling look at him. He found joy in her joy. Warmth spread through his chest as being someone she wanted near her. "This is Hayden's group." Yeardley squeezed his arm and gave it a shake. She had just met this person, yet her nervousness for them and their costuming group radiated from her. Lady Hayden and a cohort of others dressed as high fantasy dwarves took to the runway. The dresses were a multitude of colors, and the hairpieces were elaborate combinations of Renaissance and mid-18th century French wigs. Piles of braids, jewelry woven in and out of the strands, and hair piled high and sculpted to represent small animals like squirrels and forest floor flora such as mushrooms. "That looks like a lot of work," Wolf said, leaning close to Yeardley. "That's what Maisie wants to do?" Maisie leaned across Yeardley. "Yes, it's incredible, isn't it?" Wolf had to admit, it was fun to look at. He cut a glance at Yeardley's friend. She was the right stature for a lady dwarf. "That would be fun, but I'm too tall," Yeardley said. She sounded a bit disappointed. "You are wonderfully tall," Wolf crooned. "You would make a beautiful elf if you wanted to do high fantasy. But I'd love to see you dressed up as a Valkyrie or a shield maid to go with my Viking. You want to do a couple's cosplay?" She turned to him with wide eyes and a laughing smile. "Seriously?" He bumped her shoulder with his. "Maybe it could be fun." She slid her hand into his. She didn't say anything, but her smile and the rise of color on her cheeks was promising. The lady dwarves were leaving the stage when he felt it. A pulse of power that he was beginning to associate with a magical event. Vic turned to him at the same time he leaned forward to put his hand on Vic's shoulder. "You felt that too?" "I've got to find a computer," Wolf said as he sprang to his feet. Instead of stepping over knees to get out of the row of chairs, he climbed onto his chair and leapt empty chair to empty chair over the rows until there were no more chairs. He hit the ground, running into the vendor section. His gaze scanning for a laptop he could borrow. Yeardley looked after him. "What was that?" "Maybe he really has to pee. I know I do. I was holding it long enough to see Hayden's group. I've got to go." Maisie stood and began wiggling her way out of the row. Vic looked at Aaliyah and then made eye contact with her. "You might want to leave." "What?" Yeardley asked. "Oh shit, you mean like last time?" Aaliyah asked. When Vic nodded, she grabbed her bags and began leaving. "Yeardley, we have got to go." Yeardley was on her feet and following her friends out of the seating area. "I'm going to go find Wolf," she said. "Get out of here, Yeardley," Vic growled from somewhere behind her. She ran and didn't stop until she found Wolf. Some skinny kid was nervously hovering while Wolf focused on the laptop and typed away frantically. "Get a computer," Wolf growled. "Find her a laptop. Now." The kid scrambled and ran. "What the hell is going on?" Yeardley asked. There was a large oh and ah gasp from the costuming contest. She turned to see a drawn chariot roll in through the ballroom doors. At the reins stood a dwarf, resplendent in battle armor, holding up a gleaming double-headed battle axe. The costume was elaborate, beautiful even. The work on the chariot was exceptional all the way down to the really large armored goats that pulled it. Well damn, they had to have won the contest with that much detail in that entrance. Another loud gasp and everyone's attention, including Yeardley's, was drawn to the opposite entrance. Another battle chariot, but this time. Where did they find dogs that big? This chariot was equally elaborate, but not beautiful. It looked slimy, and those dogs were huge and looked really grumpy. The goblin at the reins had gray skin and was emaciated. The foot soldiers who followed moved weirdly low and crept like spiders. Do you see this, wolf? Those dogs are freaking huge. Dire wolves, he said. He didn't look up and kept typing away. How can you tell? You aren't even looking. Wolf pulled the laptop from the hands of the kid. Thanks, now you need to get out of here. Dude, you can't just steal my shit, demand another laptop and... Wolf grabbed the kid's head and turned him to face the contest stage. You play Codex Wars? Oh, screw me, the kid said. Get out and take people with you. He glanced up at Yeardley. You code? Time to code. Wolf sidestepped and began typing on the new laptop. He pointed at the one he just left. Yeardley saw a screen full of code. It would take her a minute to figure out what this was telling her. Especially since it wasn't in configurations she recognized. She scanned and began scrolling. Game code. What am I looking at, and why? I don't have time to explain everything. Look for anything that starts with this. With a long nail, Wolf pointed to a line of syntax. Yeardley attempted to read it, but it made no sense. The part she understood involved opening a gate. No, a gateway. Find that, delete that. He sounded like he was in pain. She looked at his face, it was contorted. He wrapped one arm around his middle and continued to hack at the keyboard one-handed. She started with a universal find and replace. Only it seemed to take forever to complete the find function. You can't do it that way, Wolf said. His voice suddenly sounded lispy. The line code is too long, too many instances. Just start scrolling and deleting. I'm going to try to reprogram the portals. Look. I'm not going to be able to finish right away. So no matter what happens to me. Take that laptop and run, keep deleting that line. He fell to the floor. Wolf. She was on her knees next to him as he convulsed. She looked up for Vic, for anyone she could ask for help from. She scanned the area and didn't believe what she was seeing. There was a full battalion of goblins, some riding the backs of the dire wolves, facing off a battalion of dwarves. Some people took pictures with their phones, while others tried to get out of the way, panic clear on their faces. What is going on? She turned her attention back to Wolf, only he was no longer there. Instead, she knelt next to a wolf, almost as large as the wolves in the goblin army. He was mostly gray with a line of brown across his back and shoulders. She fell back on her butt. The wolf looked at her, nodded, and then darted into the standoff. He stopped next to a bear. Yelling from the dwarves and goblins got louder, they banged on shields, their battle animals screamed or growled with frightening sounds. Their characters surged together. There was no way this was some kind of staged reenactment. The bear and the wolf, that explained a lot, surged into the fray. After moments of stunned inaction, Yeardley scrambled back to her feet and began deleting the code that Wolf had identified. He said he was working on portals. She put down the laptop she had been working on and began scanning the code he had been pounding away on. There it was. She watched as a line of code appeared. Someone else was inputting a new source. She scanned it. There was a rhyming quality to the code. It was different, and it had a unique identifier at the beginning, a bit of non-functional text that served almost like a signature. Whoever was putting in the code Wolf wanted gone was essentially saying, I did this. She highlighted the code and deleted it. She scrolled and found another block of code. All she needed to do was look for that signature. This time, instead of deleting the code, she reconfigured it. She knew secured delivery. She secured the portal, basically locking it from one direction. She didn't know if that would help, but she continued locking down the portal. There was a panicked cry, and she noticed the goblin army was no longer pouring in through the doors to the ballroom. Dwarves armed for battle continued to run in. With a deep breath, she returned the code. She needed to wrap the portal code in a secure packet and stop them from functioning. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. There was a battle of programming going on in front of her, and she was pretty sure it was directly related to the battle behind her. She glanced over her shoulder. Holy wow, was that a battle boar? Costumed humans had entered the fight, thinking it was something other than what it was, and they were getting hurt. Really hurt. Every time she encountered the syntax Wolf wanted her to delete, she deleted it. Every time she found mention of a portal, she locked it. A new piece of code popped up. She stared at it, evaluating it. What if I did? She began altering the code as it appeared. She turned the laptop around so that she didn't have to keep looking behind her. Now she could just look up. She typed in what she wanted, and yes, it altered something in the battle. Dwarves retreated through their doors, but goblins could not get through that portal. She entered another block of code. Nothing happened. She needed water. A lot of it. She looked up at the ceiling. She needed the sprinklers to activate. Wolf left the coding in Yeardley's capable fingers and bounded into the battle. He stopped with Vic at his side. The giant bear was waiting for something. Scottie hadn't arrived yet, but wherever he had been, he had to have felt the magic surge. The shift would hit, and he would be here soon. Anticipation hung heavy in the air. The eerie calm before battle covered his skin, prickling his nerves, making his fur stand on end. The tension broke, and the armies yelled out their battle cries and rushed together. The fighting armies had entered the ballroom through magical portals. Wolf ran around the boundaries of the battle. As long as the humans stayed clear, everything should be fine. His goal was to keep the humans safe when the video games became real. At first his task was easy. Scare the bystanders away, but then, some guy thinking he was a genuine warrior in cosplay armor came screaming into the mix. Wolf was too far from him to help, but Vic was there. The bear got between a rampaging dire wolf and the puny human in costume. Soon, too many others were doing the same. This wasn't some free-for-all melee. Wolf circled round, wanting to make sure Yeardley was safe. Doing his best to keep the edges of the battle from spilling over into the vending booths. When he could spare a glance, Yeardley was gone. Maybe she had run, hopefully she was safe. He didn't have time to be distracted. Didn't have time to wonder what it was about Codex Wars specifically that was letting magic in via code. He heard the scream of fire before he smelled the smoke. Just great, a fire was not going to be helpful right now. Within seconds, the sprinkler system spit to life and stale moldy water sprayed down on everyone and everything in the ballroom. That's when he paused. The goblins and dwarves, and all the things they brought in with them from the Codex Wars realm, began melting. They dissolved like the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. He leapt back to where he had left Yeardley, hadn't seen her there the last time he looked. Within moments of sniffing for her, he located her, soaking wet, hunched up under a table, computer in her lap. It worked, she yelled triumphantly. Oh crap! She yelled as the change washed over Wolf, and he was back to human form and kneeling in front of her. All of his clothes, a little worse for wear, were still on. He reached for her and pulled her out from under the table. We have got to get out of here. He took her hand and pulled her to the nearest door. Out on the hotel's concourse, people were scrambling, looking for friends, and trying to get out the doors. Yeardley yelled and tugged Wolf back. Maisie, she yelled. I'll find her, you get out of here. Yeardley stopped, looked out the glass doors, and then pulled him in close. I'll be under that tree. She pointed out into the parking lot. There were a lot of trees. He'd find her. She ran, and he began fighting his way back into the crowd. He wasn't too worried about Aaliyah, she would have Vic looking out for her, but he had no idea where that idiot Scottie would be, and someone had to look after Maisie. He jumped up, trying to see over the mass of people. She was not a tall woman, and he didn't know where she had gone. He saw Scottie. The tall red-headed man waved at him. That was effing lit. Scottie laughed as he approached Wolf. Wolf cut him off. We need to find Maisie. Crap. Where's Yeardley? Vic? Aaliyah? Scottie asked, his expression changing instantly from exuberance to concern. Wolf shook his head. Yeardley is in the parking lot. She's safe. I have to assume Vic is taking care of Aaliyah. Scottie. Both men turned toward the sound of Scottie's name. Wolf only saw people, too many of them. The entire convention was flooding out these doors, and it looked like other guests staying at the hotel as well. Maisie, he and Scottie yelled. I'm here. Hands shot up in the thick of the crowd and began waving. Scottie began making his way toward her. Wolf followed in his wake. When they reached her, she was flushed and panting. Her makeup streamed down her cheeks as if she had been crying. She hugged Scottie first and then Wolf. Come on, let's get you out of here and catch up with everyone. By the time they fought through the crowd to get outside, emergency crews were already running into the crowd. Wolf led Scottie and Maisie toward the tree he thought Yeardley had indicated. He sighed with relief when he saw her standing there with Vic and Aaliyah. They were all waving at him. He lifted his hand, his arm suddenly tired and heavy. Maisie ran and crashed into a hug with Yeardley and Aaliyah. By the time Wolf reached the group, Yeardley had disengaged herself from her friends and was wrapping her arms around him. I cannot wait for you to tell me how you did that, he said against her hair. You are a badass. What just happened? Maisie asked. I went to the bathroom, and then I couldn't get back into the ballroom. The doors were locked and I could hear screaming. And then chaos, and people were going crazy. Gas leak, they all seemed to say at the same time. Well, FanFunCon is officially over, Scottie said. They haven't had time to make any decisions like that, Maisie said. She sounded more sad than disappointed. After this, it's gonna shut down. Wolf's phone buzzed in his pocket. He fished it out and looked at the message. Definitely closed. The entire hotel is. I just got a text saying they will relocate me for the night, but I won't be able to return to my room to get my things until tomorrow. That sucks, Scottie said. What now? Maisie asked. I don't want to go home. Can we go get some food? You know what, that sounds like a good idea. Scottie draped an arm over her shoulder and began walking off toward his car. None of them said much as they followed, but Yeardley kept looking at Wolf expecting him to say something. Hamburgers or burritos? I could use some fries, so hamburgers. The conversation ping-ponged around as they narrowed in on a family-owned burger place a little farther away, but they knew would not be overrun by other con-goers. Okay, Scottie bounced away from Maisie and slid into the driver's seat of his new car. This is me, race you there. He pulled forward through the space in front of him and left before anyone could really respond. I can't race a Porsche, Yeardley muttered. Not even going to try. I'm parked over this way. She pointed and began walking. Vic and Aaliyah continued on to his car. Maisie didn't move. She stared at the empty parking space. She looked like she wanted to cry. Wolf wrapped an arm over her shoulder. He's an idiot, he said. Earlier, he said he would take me for a ride to show off his new toy. He didn't even ask, she sounded numb, past disappointment. Scottie is clueless. Come with us, and tell us all about this lady dwarf cosplay you're thinking about. I didn't hear everything you said back there. Chapter 4. As soon as they made it to the restaurant, Yeardley, Aaliyah, and Maisie went into the ladies' room to wash up. Maisie had a hard time holding back her sniffles. Wolf had done a great job keeping her distracted on the car ride, but as soon as she saw Scottie, it was impossible for her to hide her disappointment. Yeardley ran a paper towel under warm water and began wiping Maisie's face. He's a himbo, Maisie. He is not worth your tears, Aaliyah said. Right, she sniffed. Boys aren't worth crying over, and the ones who are will do their best to never make you cry. Exactly, Yeardley agreed. He's clueless. He probably doesn't even realize he did anything wrong. You don't need to waste your time on clueless. Cute and clueless, she pouted. Yeardley sighed and leaned against the sink. She couldn't think of anything to say that didn't sound hypocritical. After all, it was clear she was connecting with Wolf, and Aaliyah and Vic were stuck together like superglue. Of course, Maisie would want to make that same connection with someone, and how perfect would it be if that person could be Scottie? Not only was he already her crush, but he was friends with her girlfriend's guys. I don't know what to tell you, sweetie. I don't know him that well, and he just seems so self-absorbed. But don't listen to me. I don't know him that well. Listen to Aaliyah, she's been around him more. But I like himbos, they don't walk around calling themselves alphas, and just being jerks. They are genuinely kind, do the right thing because it's right. They listen when it's time to listen, and they aren't afraid to show emotions. Are you thinking about George of the Jungle again? Listen, that movie and Brendan Fraser single-handedly ruined me for men for the rest of my life. Everyone else is walking around blaming animated characters, and I have to deal with the single most himbo of himbo movies. Maisie sighed. I'll be okay. I can friend-zone myself and get over him. I just need a harder shell. Look, if anyone asks, I was scared and upset by the gas leak at the hotel. I mean that. It's not a lie exactly. But I don't want the guys to know that. I won't say anything, Yeardley said. Aaliyah didn't say anything. When her friends looked at her, she shrugged. I won't mention that he made you cry, but I might say something to Vic. I'm not joking when I say Scottie can be clueless. Vic could be the clue by 4 he needs upside the back of his head. I mean, I would tell him that he's a dummy, and he needs to be more mindful of what he says. Maisie blinked at Aaliyah. The sad expression on her face didn't change. Okay, I won't say anything. I promise, Aaliyah said. Yeardley made an effort to sit between Maisie and Scottie in the booth, so that it didn't emphasize the fact that she and Wolf were clearly leveling up their relationship status. Many baskets of cheese fries later, Scottie leaned back and admitted defeat. I think today has won. And I still need to edit some of the video I took today and get it posted. Plus, I have got to get out of this body paint. It's itchy. Maisie grinned at him, but turned to Yeardley. Can I get a ride home? Of course, you don't have to ask. You know, Maisie, I did promise I'd show you my new car. You want to ride with me? Yeardley felt Maisie start to vibrate, where their legs touched in the booth. Are you sure? I live clear over in Inglewood, and you're in the opposite direction. How do you know where I live? Have you been stalking me? Aaliyah told us, Maisie answered. I suppose she also told you that I need furniture, he asked. When he stood, he yawned, stretching up, showing off his height. Yeardley suppressed a laugh at the odd expression on Maisie's face. The last thing she wanted was for Maisie to get hurt, but if this was the beginning of something between the two of them, she was going to cheerlead for it. Maisie deserved someone who made her happy and treated her well. I totally told them you need furniture. I can't believe you bought a car before you bought a couch, Aaliyah said as she shook her head. Priorities, Scottie proclaimed. Exactly, you have none. Everyone laughed. You coming? When he held out his hand to Maisie, she pushed on Yeardley to get up so she could squirm out of the booth and follow him. Text me when you get home, Yeardley called out after them. Me too, Aaliyah added. Vic shook his head as he watched them leave. I guess that's our cue. What are you up to tonight? Aaliyah punched him in the chest. What? She opened her eyes wide and looked from Vic to Yeardley and back. Oh right. I guess we're off. Have fun, kids. He got out of the booth, waiting for Aaliyah. Vic smirked before following Aaliyah out of the restaurant. Yeardley fell into the booth and leaned forward, hitting her head on the table. That wasn't embarrassing or anything, she said. Stop, you'll hurt your face, Wolf said as he slid into the booth next to her. His hand was warm on the back of her neck. She sat up and leaned against him. You don't have a hotel room and I live with my sister. Wolf let out a heavy breath. Unless we want any sounds we make broadcast in Minvid, I suggest we go back to the hotel and let them get me a room elsewhere. Scottie is going to be editing all night. Yeardley sat up and looked up at Wolf. Did you say something to him? Oh, like how he was rude to Maisie? Yeah, we both did. He said he was so amped from the fight that he jumped in his car and went, and by the time he realized what he had done, it was too late to circle back and ask if she wanted to go with him. I know she likes him. But I don't know if he's mature enough for a relationship. Maisie would be good for him, but would he be good for her? That's what I'm worried about. Hey, we'll both keep an eye on him. And I know you and Aaliyah watch out for Maisie. Yeardley nodded. Back to the hotel then? Yeardley leaned on the check-in counter playing on her phone as Wolf made arrangements with the hotel to be relocated. He still wasn't going to be allowed into his room until the fire marshal was able to conduct a thorough inspection. A text from Maisie came in. Made it home. Good, Yeardley typed. Did he say anything? Aaliyah asked. Yeah, he apologized, said he felt awful about ditching me like that. I have his phone number now and can text him. There were 3 exclamation points. I know y'all think he's dumb, but he had some really insightful ideas when it came to my cosplay ideas. I'm glad he's behaving better, Yeardley typed. I never said he was dumb. I said he was an idiot. There is a difference. Aaliyah's message made Yeardley chuckle. What's so funny? Wolf asked. Oh, all set? Yeardley held up her phone. My friends are hilarious. Yeah, I have a room at Ralston Suites. It's about a mile that way, he pointed away from the freeway. Shall we? I also have a gift card to get some fresh clothes. This is costing the hotel thousands. Well, you won't need that gift card tonight, will you? I hope not. His voice dropped and the growl sent shivers up Yeardley's spine. Wolf, Yeardley finally got the nerve to ask. They were headed back to her car, in the same lot they had evacuated to, after the was it a situation? A battle? The official excuse from the hotel was a gas leak. But really, what had happened? You will tell me what exactly happened this afternoon, won't you? He stopped and tugged her hand so she spun to face him. I will tell you everything. Thank you for keeping it quiet when Maisie was around. The fewer people who know, the better it is. I think. But I have to ask you, knowing what you saw me do, is that going to change anything between us? It's not going to change anything. Now maybe this thing about your name, Simon, might. She wrapped her arms around his middle and began dragging him toward her car. Wolf lay spread out on the second bed in the room. He was forlorn and distracted. Yeardley had expected him to be at least animated as he told her what had happened back there at the convention. They had arrived at the new hotel, gotten the key, and as soon as they walked in the door, Wolf fell back on the bed and groaned. Not knowing what to do, after grabbing the remote, she climbed onto the second bed and pulled her shoes off. After throwing them across the room with a double thud, she sat cross-legged and began flicking through channels. She split her time watching to see if the show was interesting or not, mostly not, and checking her phone. Maisie had arrived home safely, but was now providing a text recap of her ride home with Scottie in his new car. This was a second-by-second replay. Yeardley didn't need to reply other than hitting the heart emoji every so often. She gave Wolf some time. This afternoon had been, for lack of a better word, intense. She climbed off the bed and began rummaging in the bag from the drugstore. They had gotten drinks and candy and other snacks. She grabbed the pack of red licorice and returned to her spot in the middle of what she now considered her bed. She chewed on the candy, watched random bits of random shows, and read Maisie's texts. Other than the fact she was in costume in a hotel room with Wolf, this could have been any other lazy Saturday afternoon. She pulled another licorice stick from the package and looked over at the man sprawled out. She stood and, taking a giant step, stepped across the gap onto the other bed. It rocked, and she wobbled a bit before finding her balance. She stepped next to Wolf's head and looked down at him. His eyes were closed. "Whoa," he said as he cracked his eyes open. "You look crazy tall from here." He closed his eyes again, and she crouched down to be closer. "You ever just need time to process everything?" he asked. "It's like for a minute I just need everything to stop moving so I can think straight again." He reached up and traced his fingers down the side of her face. "You are so beautiful." "I was thinking something similar," Yeardley said as she gazed down on him. "We need to address the elephant in the room before proceeding." Wolf rolled and sat up facing her. "Which elephant is that? There is an entire herd in here." Yeardley fell back onto her butt. Wolf climbed toward her. "Simon?" she asked. He rolled so he was laying back on the bed, but this time his head was in her lap. He reached up and stole the licorice sticking out of her mouth. He took a bite before returning it to her mouth. "Blame my parents for that," he said. "And Wolf? That's a bit more complicated. Come here." He wrapped a hand around the back of her neck and tugged her down. She laughed as he raked his nails through her hair as it fell into his face. "Uncomplicated. I guess it started when I started choosing Viking skins in games." "So games came first?" "I'm a half-blind nerd boy named Simon who programs video games for fun." "Yes, games came first." "Okay, Simon, so you started playing Vikings. And that led to cosplay, and then really getting into it. Like really. I follow Odin and Thor. I know that Valhalla is out there for when I die with honor and glory. And that for some reason Odin chose me and my brethren, Vic and Scottie, for some glorious battle." Yeardley rested back on her hands. "Yeah, but," she looked up thinking. "Did your affinity with a name come before or after?" Wolf twisted so he could see her. "After. I saw you shapeshift today. And that might be from the gas leak, but I don't have the headache that usually follows exposure to natural gas. So either I got a whiff of someone's LSD, or I saw what I saw. And well, the LSD might be a more acceptable answer. Sorry, no LSD. My personality of the Berserker Wolf was probably the second thing I established after the first time I chose a Viking skin." "Okay, that's 2 big elephants out of the way," Yeardley said. "I need a bath. You going to join me?" "Excuse me? If I've been exposed to gas or LSD or whatever, I would like to wash it off. I know I at least need to get that sprinkler system water off of me. There is a giant bathtub in there." She pointed in the direction of the bathroom, "and there are at least 2 more elephants we need to address." Wolf was on his feet and striding into the bathroom. "How hot do you like your bath? Lava or sauna?" "Not quite sauna," she said. "I thought all women like their baths scalding hot. I don't want to be boiled. I want to be clean." "Bubbles?" Yeardley scrambled off the bed and stopped in the bathroom door. "They have bubbles?" "Yes, bubbles." She began picking through the towels. "They never give enough towels. Maybe we should have stopped and used that gift card to get some clean t-shirts and shorts. Why don't you call the front desk and order some towels while the tub is filling?" Chapter 5. Yeardley let Wolf sleep. After about 20 minutes, she realized he was down for the long term. Poor guy had to have been exhausted. She, on the other hand, was antsy. Realizing it was only about 4, she got dressed, grabbed the room key and left. But not until after she left a quick note and placed it on his phone, just out of reach of his hand, hoping he would find it. She didn't know about him, but she hated the idea of not having clean clothes for later, hated that she was back in the cosplay clothes that had been coated in sprinkler water and panic sweat. Neither the hotel that hosted FanFunCon nor this one were too far from where she lived. She ran home and quickly changed into clean clothes. She tossed together a quick overnight bag. She thought about texting Aaliyah or Maisie to help her get in touch with Scottie so he could put something together for Wolf. At the very least, he would need. "He lives where?" she texted Aaliyah back once she asked for help. Yeardley stared at her phone. That wasn't simply across town, it was across town and then some. No wonder Wolf decided on staying in a hotel. And if Scottie had a new car he liked to drive, he didn't seem the kind to mind the distance. She knew if she had a Porsche Targa, she would want to drive it everywhere. Yikes. I'll hit Wally World and grab stuff. Easier, faster. And the store was between where she was and where she wanted to be, hanging out with Wolf in his hotel room. When she walked back into the hotel room, more shopping bags in hand, Wolf was already awake. He sat up in the bed they had already messed up, a towel around his head and another at his hips. You had a shower? Did you find my note? She asked. I did, thank you. You missed my disoriented panic, waking up in a hotel room with none of my things. I totally freaked out until I found your note in my hand. I ran home and got a few things. I see that. You've changed clothes. She nodded. And I got you a change too. These are probably not your style, but I didn't really think you'd be going out of the room in them. Besides, I have had fantasies about you in gray sweats. She pulled the sweats from the bag and tossed them on the still-made bed. And then unloaded a t-shirt and a pack of fresh socks. Gray sweats, he laughed. Also, she paused, held up a finger and pulled more from a different bag. I got some saline and a contacts case. My sister wears contacts, and I know what a complete pain they can be. This stuff can also double as eye drops, it's just saline. You did all of that for me? He got out of the bed and held the t-shirt up. It had a cartoon alien making a peace sign with the words, I want to believe. He pulled the tags from the sweats and then removed the towel from his hips. He twisted and looked at her and laughed as he stepped into the sweats. He pulled the shirt on, fighting the neck over the towel covering his hair. Watching you get dressed is like reverse psychology or something. 'Cause that was super hot, she confessed. You're super hot, he said as he crossed the small space to her. He put his hands on her hips and stared at her. His eyes kept drifting from hers to her lips. Maybe I didn't need to pick up a change of clothes after all, Yeardley said. I shouldn't feed your ego and tell you that you are a beautiful man, she laughed. Feed me my beauty, feed me. Let me sip from your words and partake of your pleasure. You can talk pretty too, she purred. You are inspiring and beautiful and… Oh, tell me more. She wiggled into his arms. Wait, now I'm feeding your ego, he teased. Yeah, but I don't reply in poetry. I reply in code. She began tapping on his chest. Wolf closed his eyes as she continued to tap. Not Morse code. That's binary. Shit. Do it again. She tapped and paused and continued the pattern. Wolf translated, I want. That's too many for you. Though I do want you. He opened his eyes at her, and her toes curled. Try again. The first part is right. She tapped. He shook his head. I'm getting distracted. Stop moving your leg over me like that. She ran her leg over his again. You mean that? That's it, uncle. I give up. What do you want? She sighed and rolled away from him. She placed the back of her hand on her brow. I can't believe I slept with a man who doesn't know binary. I've made a drastic mistake. I take it all back. You are so dramatic, he said as he swung his legs out of the bed and pulled on the sweats she loved seeing on him. She sat up. You have no idea. What do you want on your pizza? He picked up his phone. Yeardley gasped and threw a pillow across the room at him. You said you couldn't figure it out. Wolf ducked and laughed. It took me a second. Once I sat up, I could think it through. My preference is everything, no anchovies, no sliced tomato, extra cheese. But I'm pretty good with anything. And I'm hungry, so we will need a large, or I might have to fight you for the last piece. Wolf put his phone down on the table. Done, we have 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Wolf put the pizzas on the table and began rummaging through the bags for the drinks. They really should just unpack all of this and line it up on the low dresser. If you're looking for the Coke, I put it in the mini fridge. He opened the mini fridge, and just as Yeardley said, there were the cans of Coke all lined up and chilling. He pulled 2 out and then set them next to the pizza boxes. He found his new t-shirt on the floor and pulled it on. "Are we dressing for dinner?" Yeardley asked in a very fake, very posh British accent. "I am," Wolf rubbed at his chest. "Too many hot cheese accidents in my time. Always practice safe eating. You may live as frivolously and dangerously as you wish. But I would hate to see any of that skin of yours marred by malevolent cheese. You convinced me, no rogue cheese accidents." He started coughing as a piece of pizza went down the wrong way. "Don't choke on the pizza, that will not be a victorious way into Valhalla." He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "It would be after I told them why I choked. Watching a living Valkyrie getting dressed, most victorious." "Valkyrie, huh? Can I get a winged helmet to go with that?" "You know, that would be a pretty spectacular cosplay for you to do," he said before taking a drink of his Coke. The cold bubbles felt good on his throat after his failed attempt at choking. "You said something like that earlier." "I'm not the costume maker, that's Maisie." A perfect idea came to Wolf in a flash. He put his pizza down and waited while Yeardley finished chewing. "What?" Her eyes darted about, as if she was looking out for something suspicious. "I have a devious and ingenious plan." He let her in on his thoughts. And she lit up with happiness. "You are brilliant," she said. "I think you're the brilliant one. No, seriously, this afternoon, how did you know about the portals and the code? I mean, deleting that line of syntax in the code was what I thought was needed. But you effectively locked the other guy out." "Okay, so what was all of that?" "I wasn't delusional," Yeardley stated. Wolf looked up. He never had to explain this to anyone before. Vic and Scottie had been there. They were part of the discovery process. And as far as he knew, they were the only ones who knew. Well, and now Aaliyah and Yeardley. In a nutshell, someone has figured out how to codify magic. They have hacked into a few of the multiplayer online games and inserted code, which works like magic. Whoa! So some hacker is opening portals between the real world and the fantasy game world? Yeardley sat up on the bed and crossed her legs, her pizza and drink abandoned. That's it precisely. The Codex Wars seems to be the game that gets hit the most. At least that's the one we keep encountering. How do you know it's Codex Wars and not Edgeland or something else? I work on Edgeland. And this guy, he took one look at Yeardley's face and changed his words, person has tried. They use a line of dead code, it's like a signature. Yeah, I saw that. It really helped me figure out what didn't belong there. I used to clean that up all the time. So they stopped hitting Edgeland. Plus, I'm working on a subroutine that will automatically scrub that out of the program. That's how I know Edgeland is as clean as it can be. But I don't know about other games. Codex Wars has unique goblin hordes. They swarm like spiders, and they are this funky purple-gray color. Really distinct. They have shown up every time one of these portals gets open. Last time they came in with orcs. They respond to real-time programming. That's how you were able to lock out the portals. Now that dissolving in water, that was nifty. I saw some legs and striped tights sticking out from under a table, like in The Wizard of Oz, so I Wicked Witch of the Wested them. At least that's what I hoped I was doing. I'm shocked it worked. Brilliant. The programmers for Codex Wars are going to wonder what all that garbage is in their game when they open it back up. So you hacked into the servers for Codex Wars like you were walking into a 7-Eleven. How exactly did you do that? Wolf looked down at his hands and shrugged. I may or may not have built in a back door for easy access. Once we learned what was happening, Vic and I spent a good solid 2 days remoting into their system, and then creating an easy in and out. Couldn't your magical hacker be using the same access? I keep it monitored. I don't want to get shut out, and I'm not out to destroy the game. But when you're dressing up for kicks and giggles with your friends, you don't expect to have to battle real orcs. Those things are big. How often is this happening? A hell of a lot more than it used to. Vic even took on a contract gig with Chin Tech, the people who bought out Codex Wars, to see if there was a way he could get someone on the inside to keep an eye on the code. Why not install your subroutine on the Codex Wars servers? She asked. Every time I install it on their servers, it gets scrubbed. That's one of the things Vic tried to do, have the subroutine officially installed. But Wolf lifted one shoulder. It's been a weird uphill battle. Then why not let someone else handle it? He locked eyes with hers and she shuddered. Because that's what the good guys do, she answered. You're somehow tied up in it, and it has nothing to do with the coding, right? He nodded. I'm a wolf. Vic is a bear. Scottie is a boar. Yeardley let out a cackle. How fitting, Scottie a boar. He's such a pig, oh my god, that's why he's always saying that. She waved at her face as she continued to laugh. I'm sorry it's not funny, but it is. Oh, it's hilarious. He both loves it and hates it. And yes, we are somehow tied into it. I haven't found out if there is a command sequence that triggers the shift, or what. But when we are where the magic happens, we shift. Each of us started off our Viking personas in Codex Wars. We each chose our Berserker totem animal there. Well, not Scottie. He wanted to be Loki, the red hair and all. I think the boar was Loki's way of messing with him. This whole thing is a lot bigger than I thought it was. When she got quiet, Wolf's stomach knotted. He should have waited to have explained everything before seducing her in the tub. But how was he supposed to resist her? I get this is a lot. And I get if you... Oh no you don't. She stood up on the bed, jumped down in front of him, and then did her best to crawl into his lap, which was a challenge because he was already a big man in a small chair. This is not going to scare me off. I've already climbed a booth and set fire to curtains in a crowded hotel just to trip the sprinkler system. At this point, I'm all in. Besides, I know what you can do. Do you think I'm just going to walk away from that? Maisie is gonna freak when she finds out Scottie can shape-shift. That's got to be something he tells her. You can't say anything, Wolf admonished. We just have to get Scottie to want, or need to tell her. That's the plan. And I think we can do with a little cosplay. You are going to be such a fun boyfriend.
Thank you for listening to this edited version of Berserker Boys, Wolf. Copyright Lulu M, Sylvian and Moontan Press. To listen to the full audiobook version, please follow the link in this video's description. You will also find a link to other ebooks and audiobooks by Lulu M, Sylvian. Like and subscribe to this channel to get updates and notification for when additional romance audiobooks from Lulu M, Sylvian are posted. Please keep listening for a sneak peek into the next Berserker Boys story, Boar. It's no longer cosplay when the game gets real. Maisie is feeling glum about her cosplay and her prospects with a certain cosplaying minvid celebrity when she gets kidnapped. Thinking it's a gym bro gone too far, she realizes the game is very real when he steps through a portal and transports her to another realm. Scottie isn't about to let a very real orc take off with Maisie. Shifting into his berserker form, he runs after her only to get trapped. They have to work together to stay alive and hope their friends can rescue them. Only Maisie doesn't want to return to the real world if it means losing Scottie's affection. You don't choose the berserker life. The berserker life chooses you.
Does he really not have any furniture? He's got a big TV and a gaming chair, and I think a beanbag. There's stuff in the kitchen. But the house is really big and very empty. Yeardley watched the road in front of her as she turned into the gated entry to the subdivision. The gates weren't closed or attached to a guardhouse. They were strictly for show. Holy crap, these houses are bigger in person, Maisie said as she looked out the car window. Scottie had filmed his house more than once. She had an idea of what it looked like, and that it was big. The scale and proportion had been lost on her when watching a short minute-long video clip. Yeah, and I'm not gonna say, oh, you get used to it, because I haven't yet. These houses are freaking huge. Yeardley pulled into the drive and shut off her car. Okay, this is it. Now, I suggest you get your fangirl squealing out of the way now. This isn't Disneyland. No, it's Scotland. Maisie was awestruck. Oh my God, you did not. Please don't tell him that. He'll name the house. He'll get large white letters and mount them on the side of the house, and Wolf will never forgive me, and the homeowners association will kick them out. Maisie twisted up her expression and looked at Yeardley. And you say I have an overactive imagination. I will be as cool as I ever can be around him, which we all know doesn't happen. Okay, but try not to start crying if he says something stupid. Yeardley handed Maisie a grocery bag from their stop to pick up snack food. Don't worry, Maisie said as she followed Yeardley up the walk to the front door. He will say something stupid, and I will bite the inside of my cheek until I can get to a bathroom. I'm pretty sure a place like this has at least 2 of them. 4. It has 4 bathrooms, Yeardley said as she rang the doorbell. Maisie cocked her head to the side, as the unexpected tones of a popular Monster Family television show sounded instead of a doorbell. They didn't have to wait long before the door was yanked open by a slightly breathless Scottie. You're here. His flaming red hair was a riot of different directions, and his eyes were wide as if they caught him off guard. Hi, Maisie managed to squeak out. When she had first developed her crush on Scottie, he had been a funny and cute face on popular videos on the Minvid social media platform. He was tall and on the skinny side, with sharp cheekbones and a pointed jaw. Now he was still tall, but the skinny had been replaced with more defined muscles, and the beard he had started growing had fullness and some length to it. He was no longer some skinny cute guy. He was incredibly hot. Yet somehow he still acted as if he was just some derpy guy who made costumes and played video games, but who also worked out. Are you going to let us in, or are you going to block the door all day? Yeardley pushed in past him. Yeardley had been here enough visiting Wolf that she felt comfortable walking in, but Maisie didn't. This wasn't her house. She didn't have the excuse that on the other side of the door there would be a person welcoming her in. Scottie had stepped back so that Yeardley wouldn't run him over. He stood next to the door, still holding it open. She could simply step inside. It was no big deal, they were expected. She felt a blush burn her cheeks. This was stupid. She didn't need to be flustered walking into Scottie's house. She didn't need to be flustered around Scottie, yet there she was, nervous and jittery. Scottie took a low bow, as he made a giant sweep of his arm. Enter, milady. Maisie sniffed a small laugh and stepped inside. Thank you. She was immediately hit by the scale of the house, once under the roof. The living room ceiling was several stories high, making the large room seem even larger. She turned as she looked up and around. No wonder you got this place, she said. Huh. It reminds me of a Hollywood sound studio. So big and open. Scottie chuckled. What? It's got great lighting, Maisie said with a smile. She mostly said everything with a smile when she was around Scottie. It was a habit that she hadn't managed to break herself of, even if he didn't smile back. Most people just complain about there not being any furniture, he said with a shrug. Yeah, well, you need some in the places you live. But this is where you film and work, right? Too bad the front door cuts through your studio. I think you're the first person to get that. I want to put some rigging up there. The ceiling is high enough it would work. Maybe you need a little sign or something, telling people this is a filming studio. Right next to a jar for your couch fund. Every time someone says you need a couch, they have to give you $1. Oh, she paused and looked into her bag. There was always loose money floating around in the bottom of her purse. Seeing what she wanted, she snagged a $1 bill and handed it out to Scottie. You need a couch.
This has been Berserker Boys 2. Wolf. Written by Lulu M. Sylvian. Copyright 2023.